Make the most of your Walt Disney World vacation.
The top 6 interesting details in Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. Hi, I'm Herb Leibacher, and welcome to episode number 127 of the World of Walt podcast. Make the most of your Walt Disney World vacation for the week of October 26th, 2017. This is the podcast for Walt Disney World fans, whether you're planning your next trip or just enjoy reliving a little bit of Disney magic. You will find one in Disneyland, the Magic Kingdom, Tokyo Disneyland, and Disneyland Paris, and for a good reason. The Big Thunder Mountain Railroad is a crowd pleaser that brings the story of a sacred but desecrated mountain to life and takes you on the wildest ride in the wilderness past the mining town of Tumbleweed and the beauty of the mountains that you might see in Utah and Arizona. Today we're going to take a look at the top 6 interesting details in Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. To help me explore this topic, I'd like to welcome a guy who loves the Wild Wild West, Aaron Cohen. Aaron, welcome back.
Hello. Thank you for having me back.
I'm looking forward to talking about this, spending a little bit of time going past Tumbleweed, at least that's the name of the city, at the Magic Kingdom and all of the fun things that you can see at Big Thunder Mountain.
Yeah, me too. It's one of my favorites. It's a great ride. And it's going to be fun to kind of delve into some of the details about it.
Good. So before the main topic for today, our infamous warm-up question, and I think I know the answer you're going to give, but let's see. What is your favorite classic Future World pavilion?
Okay, so like current classic or just kind of all time?
Your call.
Okay, so if we're going to say just of all time, then the answer is Horizons, without even having to think about it.
I knew that.
And you knew that's what I was going to say. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, this is not news to anyone who's ever talked to me about Epcot at all, ever. Horizons is and will remain to be one of my all-time favorite Walt Disney World attractions. But I've got my big faves, Haunted Mansion, Pirates of the Caribbean, etc. But Horizons has always been really just up there in that top kind of 5. And it's not only that, it's always been one of those attractions that really kind of, to me, epitomized what that kind of classic Epcot Center experience was about. Mm. It was educational, it was fun, it was inspiring. It had that kind of fun Disney-esque story while still being entertaining as a ride, and still kind of having this look at a possible future. And it was so much fun. And at the end, when you could kind of choose your ending, it was really cool. I miss it.
Yeah. I think a lot of other people do as well. So we miss you, Horizons. For me, I actually had a hard time picking one. I was always a big fan of Horizons. I loved the original Journey into Imagination. I was really a big fan of the Universe of Energy. I liked the preview area where they had the moving cubes. I thought that going past the dinosaurs was great. I thought the fact that your ride vehicles were powered by the solar cells on the roof was amazing, especially way back when. But if I had to pick a favorite, and maybe it's the obvious choice, I might pick Spaceship Earth, which I think still holds a lot of what it did way back from opening day. The narration has changed, the ending has changed, but the idea of going through time and seeing how communication has evolved is still a story that unfolds before you, a really important story, and I think Disney does a great job of it. So if I had to pick one, that might be the one for me.
Yeah, I think if we were limiting it to just current pavilions, that would be the same as well, because it's a great ride. And again, it kind of hits those points of being entertaining and educational and inspiring, and it's kind of cool that you're riding inside, Spaceship Earth, inside the giant sphere. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, agreed. Good. Well, let's head back over to the Magic Kingdom and dive into our topic for today, the top 6 interesting details in Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. And Aaron, number 1 is over to you.
So my first one, you'll see almost right before you get on the ride, when you're almost done with the queue and you're going down that last ramp and you're about to go left or right to get onto the train, and the cast member is about to ask you how many in your party. If you turn around and look up, there's this big portrait of this man kind of staring down at you. Now that man is a character by the name of Barnabas T. Bullion. And there's a couple things of interest about that character. The first one is that the portrait itself is based on former Imagineer Tony Baxter, who created Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. So while the portrait is technically of a fictional character, it is very much based on a real person. And if you look at pictures of Tony Baxter next to pictures of the Barnabas T. Bullion portrait, it's pretty much the same person. Now, in, I believe, 2012, I want to say, Disney issued kind of an updated story to Big Thunder Mountain in Magic Kingdom. And that centered around the Big Thunder Mine and the story of Barnabas T. Bullion. So he kind of factors into the actual background story of the ride, which you may not really know much about just by seeing a portrait. But there's references around other places in the queue. And then the Disney Kingdom's comic book series recently put out a 5-issue miniseries, Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, which focuses on the Bullion family, Barnabas and his daughter. So it kind of tells the story of the ride in the comic book. And one part that I really find interesting about the whole thing is there's this whole kind of larger storyline that's being developed that connects a bunch of different attractions across a bunch of different parks. And that is the Society of Explorers and Adventurers, the SEA. And that includes Dr. Albert Falls from Jungle Cruise. That includes characters from Hong Kong and Tokyo and even Typhoon Lagoon. And Barnabas T. Bullion is also a member of the society. So there's this kind of larger storyline happening that incorporates characters from a bunch of different attractions, that they all knew each other and they all explored together, and the different attractions are kind of part of this big kind of meta storyline that's happening now. So if you turn around and look up, you'll see Barnabas T. Bullion, and he's just kind of this ties into a whole bunch of different kind of little hidden aspects of the attraction itself.
So you hit on a lot of very interesting things there. I think the fact that this painting is of Tony Baxter is quite an honor for him. And you're right, if you look up Tony Baxter on the internet and you compare it to the picture of Barnabas, the painting of Barnabas, it's a dead ringer. That painting
absolutely. I mean, it's very obviously based on him, and the story of Big Thunder Mountain as it has developed over the years is that it was they're mining the mountain, but the mountain itself has some supernatural aspects to it, and the miners are warned if they keep digging, there's going to be, crazy things are going to happen, and they didn't listen, and they kept mining, and that resulted in the eventually the runaway train that you end up riding.
Yeah.
It's something that you'd never really know just by riding the ride unless you really are reading comic books and following all the news and all this stuff. But it's kind of neat that this one painting can have so many different connotations within different storylines.
Yeah. And you mentioned the Society of Explorers and Adventurers. It's very interesting that Disney is weaving together a larger story that crosses parks and crosses attractions and brings together all these different characters. So that might be an interesting topic for another day, because I think that's also very interesting, and we're seeing a glimpse of that here.
This whole thing fascinates me. I've been following it for a while now, and when I was at Destination D conference last year, it came up in the course of the different panels and presentations that happened. And it's fascinating just the way that you've got these different characters and there are different attractions in different parks, but it's all part of the same basic story. And even Typhoon Lagoon has a character, and one of the newer attractions includes it. And it's starting to kind of develop threads in a bunch of different things, and it's throughout the Disney parks. And it's a fascinating thing to follow.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we serious Disney fans enjoy is sort of that behind the scene. And even when it comes to characters and story, I think there are behind the scenes angles to it. I heard something similar about a thread that connects some of the Pixar films together. There have been some videos about that, which is interesting because you would think that those movies are all very, very different, but there are some pieces that can connect one to the other. And if you sort of dig into it, maybe you think too much and you make up those pieces, but it's all very interesting to think about those behind the scenes story points.
Yeah, and a lot of Disney movies, I mean, there's often references to one another. I mean, there's Mulan references in Lilo & Stitch, for example, and, often if you pay attention, you'll find these kind of hidden little things in the other movies. But yeah, I've heard the Pixar thing about how there's this kind of unifying threads that kind of tie them into the same universe a little bit.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, this is a good one. And if you have a chance to ride Big Thunder Mountain and go through the cube, be sure to look for that painting of Barnabas. It's a very well done painting and ties into the backstory. Very interesting. Good number one. So number two is over to me. We almost didn't get Big Thunder Mountain. We almost got something a little bit different and maybe even a little bit grander. So way back when Disney originally designed and built the Magic Kingdom, there were no plans for Pirates of the Caribbean. I think the Disney designers thought, Florida's kind of close to the Caribbean, so people who are not going to be interested because they could go and see the real Caribbean. Why would they want to go and see a Disney-created Caribbean? So they had ideas for something that brought the Wild Wild West to the Magic Kingdom, but it wasn't Big Thunder Mountain. It was something called the Western River Expedition. So the Western River Expedition was designed by Disney Imagineer Mark Davis, who has done a lot of things for the company. The executives at the time, including Roy Disney, liked the concepts that Mark had come up with, and plans were moving along to build this new super attraction, which actually may have even been two different attractions. There was a river piece and there was a runaway mine train piece, interestingly enough. And this all would have been housed in this humongous show building on the edge of the Magic Kingdom. So the project, I think, grew in scope and in price, and so the money and the will to build it maybe just wasn't there at the time. When the Magic Kingdom first opened, it wasn't an instant moneymaker. It did fine, but there were some questions at the beginning, especially given some of the economic conditions at the time. The other thing that happened, though, is when the Magic Kingdom opened, people were constantly asking, where is Pirates of the Caribbean? They had heard about this attraction in Disneyland, and they expected to see one in Florida, which I think took Disney planners and management a bit by surprise. So the Western River Expedition went on hold, and Pirates of the Caribbean was greenlit and eventually built in the Magic Kingdom. And so good ideas never die at Walt Disney. So this idea of the runaway mine train from the Western River Expedition, we eventually did get in the form of Big Thunder Mountain. But this concept of Big Thunder Mountain in the Magic Kingdom was not an original design idea, and I think that's all very interesting.
Yeah, it is kind of funny to go back in history and see what was planned and how things have changed and what ideas, got shelved for a while and then got brought back to the forefront.
Yeah, and one idea plays off another and it morphs into something else, and you may not get the original idea. You may get something that's gone through a number of revisions and iterations, but all that history is interesting to hear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that was number two. So number three, Aaron, back to you.
So the next one is you kind of have to be familiar with old Disney live-action movies to really appreciate. There's a movie that came out a long time ago. I don't know the year it was released, called The Apple Dumpling Gang. One of the more popular of Disney's old live-action movies. It starred Don Knotts and Tim Conway as kind of bumbling Old West wannabe outlaws who end up on a series of adventures and end up kind of with a group of little kids, and it's a small western town and a whole thing. There are actually references to the Apple Dumpling Gang in the queue for Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. I have found 3. There is a wanted sign which basically says wanted for attempted bank robbery, et cetera, and it lists the characters' names from the movie, Theodore and Amos. So that's, it's this big kind of poster that says wanted. There's a smaller sign at a different point that has kind of hand-drawn pictures of them, like portraits. It's another kind of like notice, be on the lookout for these shady characters kind of thing. And it's these kind of hand-drawn mug shots of Theodore and Amos, Don Knotts and Tim Conway. And then there's the last one is an advertisement for the Hard Times Cafe, which is a reference to the movie. And there's even a notice on the ad that says, "Try the apple dumplings, a specialty of the house." So it's just these little nods to this kind of classic Old West comedy that Disney put out decades ago.
Huh. That's interesting. Don Knotts and Tim Conway. There's some names from the past, huh?
It's a hilarious movie. I actually watched it not too long ago.
Yeah.
And just wondering, I mean, it's one of those things that, I mean, like I said, I don't remember when it came out, but it was decades ago. It was when Don Knotts and Tim Conway were, acting.
Yeah.
And, it holds up. It's stupid and it's slapstick, but it's hilarious in its own way. So it's one of those things that if you're really into kind of like this kind of classic Disney humor and classic Disney live action, it's worth checking out.
Huh. Interesting. I don't remember ever having watched that movie, but I may have to go and check it out because I think Tim Conway was hilarious. He's a really, really funny guy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The two of them together, it like I said, it was just, and it's one of those just slapsticky, innocent comedies, but it was funny.
Huh. Very interesting.
And it's kind of funny. It's kind of cool that it's referenced in this attraction.
Yeah. It is. All those little pieces that end up in one place or another. That's really interesting. Okay, that was number 3. So number 4, one thing that I think is really interesting about Big Thunder Mountain is that there are a lot of parts of the Big Thunder Mountain Railroad experience that fly by very, very quickly. And there are 2 of them which I think are really interesting, but if you blink, you might miss them. So one is that when you were going by the city, which in the Magic Kingdom edition of Big Thunder Mountain is called Tumbleweed, Tumbleweed is being destroyed by a flash flood. And if you go by, you will see a building on your left, and the upper floor is illuminated. And there's a party going on in that building. People are hooting and hollering. People have raised their mugs of drink. While outside, the city is getting ready to be washed away by a flood, which is very easy to miss. Another detail that flies by really quickly, your train is moving fast, is as you near the end of the attraction, near the loading station, you go by this huge skeleton of a dinosaur. And I've heard people talk about all the places in Walt Disney World where you can see dinosaurs. And Big Thunder Mountain normally doesn't show up on that list because it's another one where if you blink, you'll miss it. But you actually almost go through more by the rib cage and the skeleton, and you can see the head, the skull of the dinosaur, and there are all kinds of little little details all around Big Thunder Mountain. And I think that's one of the things that makes the attraction a lot of fun. Yeah,
in fact, it was funny when I was researching some stuff for this podcast. I actually looked up the dinosaur to see if it had like a name or a backstory or anything. I couldn't find anything. To be fair, I didn't try very hard, but I looked for a few minutes and couldn't really find anything. And I'm sure somewhere in some Imagineering book there's a name and there's possibly even a story behind why it's there.
Mm-hmm.
But I did look to see if I could toss that a bit of trivia out there.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting. One thing I found is that I believe the names of the cities that appear in the big Thunder Mountain attractions at different Disney parks around the world have different names. So in Florida, the little city which is being destroyed by a flash flood is Tumbleweed, but in other locations, the name of the city is different, and I think that's kind of fun.
Yeah, and in fact, I know in Paris, the whole Frontierland storyline ties into their haunted mansion, Phantom Manor, which is in Frontierland because it's part of their Ravenswood is the last name of the family there instead of Bullion, and it ties in like Haunted Mansion and Big Thunder Mountain are much more closely tied in story in Paris than they are in domestic parks.
Huh. Very interesting. I didn't realize that. That can be on my list of places to visit someday.
Oh, yeah. No, it's definitely on mine.
Good. Okay, that was number 4, all the details, many of them which fly by really fast. So number 5, Aaron, back to you.
All right. So there's certain attractions, and Big Thunder Mountain is one of them, that I highly recommend people, if they get the chance, to ride during the day and at night. And that's because the experience is actually very different. And you wouldn't think so. It's the same ride, it's the same tracks, the same cars. I mean, what could change? But there's a couple differences, and one of them is just the ride itself feels faster, rougher. The drops seem droppier. And I think it's in part because it's not really well illuminated at night. I mean, there's the show lighting, but it's not like there's these big floodlights on the track. So you can't really see the track very well. So you can't really see what's coming. So during the day, you can see, oh, hey, there's a drop coming up. Oh, hey, there's going to be this kind of curve. And at night, you don't get that kind of advanced view. So it just seems like everything's going much faster, and there's more surprises in the track. So even though it's the exact same track, it's going the exact same speed, it can feel like a different coaster day versus night. There's also some details you really can't see during the day, and that's in part because there's a point when you're outside and you're in the sun, and then all of a sudden you go inside into this cave section, and you're not there long enough for your eyes to really adjust. So you don't really see anything when you're back outside again. And last time I was there, actually, we rode during the day, and there's a part early on when you go into this cave and you hear these bats squealing, and you see these red eyes kind of around, and you're in a cave and there's bats, and that's what it is. And then we rode it at night, and it's the same cave, and you go in at the same speed, at the same time, etc. But now you can see the bats, and they're just these rubber bats kind of flying around, and there's some black light accents on them to make them kind of pop, and you just don't see it because it's happening so fast, and your eyes aren't adjusting between light and dark that fast.
Yeah,
you completely miss them. And actually, the party thing that you mentioned, I've heard is easier to see at night because the windows are lit up.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see like the silhouettes of the people partying, where during the day it's not quite as clear. So there are some details that you can't see during the day that you can at night, but also some of the external stuff is much easier to see. Like some of the animals, like the goats and all that, are much easier to see during the day because you've got natural light. So it really is worth riding it during the day and at night and kind of appreciating what you can see each time.
I agree. And I think this is a great point. Everything from the exterior lighting on the mountains itself, which is beautiful at the nighttime, but also beautiful in a different way during the day. And the point about your eyes being adjusted to the parts that are indoors, I think is very true. I think that's true of the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. And oddly, I think it's true of Space Mountain, even though you are inside for the entire time. If you ride that attraction at night, when your eyes have adjusted to the nighttime, you see a lot more than you do in the daytime, even though you are inside for the entire duration of that attraction. So I think there are a lot of reasons to visit this and a lot of other Disney attractions, both at the daytime and the nighttime, because you really do get different experiences.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, that was number 5. So number 6, back over to me. So a few years ago, Disney made some updates to Big Thunder Mountain, and one of the things they did is added some interactive elements to the queue. So one of the elements I think is fun are canaries that you can see. So there's a saying, the canary in the coal mine, because miners would carry canaries with them. Canaries are sensitive to certain gases that will kill people, but canaries are even more sensitive, so they would die before these gas levels would get to level that would harm a human. So miners would often have canaries with them. And there's a part in the standby queue where you can see animated canaries. There's a spot where there are some demolition points where you look out into the final bend of the attraction. And to be honest, I have not been very good at sort of figuring out getting those demolition things to work, but I trust that they do in some sort of combination. And one of my favorite parts of the standby queue are the zoetropes, where you can spin a lever and it makes sort of a movie that gets animated. So I've got to admit that for the most part, I am a Fast Pass guy for Big Thunder Mountain. I enjoy the attraction a lot. I get to visit it quite often do so in a Fast Pass. But if you don't have a Fast Pass for it, there are some fun things to see in the interactive queue. And even if you do prefer to do Big Thunder Mountain with a Fast Pass, maybe sometime try to get there early in the day and check out the interactive elements in the standby queue.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that you won't necessarily see them all, even if you're in standby, unless it's really busy. The first time I rode it after they incorporated all these new things, because it wasn't that busy of a day, half the queue, they didn't have half the switchbacks open. You kind of just went right through. So I didn't even see the demolition stuff at first until later on. And that's neat. You kind of spin a thing and you drop the lever and you watch, and there'll be a little puff of smoke coming from somewhere out on the mountain. So, while I'm not suggesting that, you sit there and wait in line when it's super busy, it is kind of interesting that different times can yield different experiences depending on which parts of the queue are open.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen that as well. You're right. Even if you do go standby, certain sections of the queue may not be open, which is good because that means you get onto the main attraction sooner. But in a way,
right,
you might miss out. Yeah, exactly. It's the whole point. But you might miss out on some of these things that you could have a chance to see otherwise. So before we do the recap, one of my Big Thunder Mountain stories is that I have on, I think, 2 occasions gone to Big Thunder Mountain first thing in the morning, right after the park opens. And right after the park opens, a lot of people will head towards Seven Dwarfs Mine Train these days. They'll go to Tomorrowland. People tend to hang a right. But if you go to Frontierland right as the park opens, it's often more deserted than the other sections of the park. And I've had a couple chances where I've gotten on where there pretty much was not a line of people waiting to get back into the trains, and the cast members were just letting people stay on, and if you wanted to just ride again and again and again, you could. And my record was 6.
Ooh,
yeah,
you beat mine.
Yeah, so that was a lot of fun. So no guarantees that can happen, and on a busy day, I imagine it can't. But if you are there on a less busy day and you go first thing in the morning, there could be a chance that you would not have to get off the train and could just ride it several times in a row without having to go back through the queue. Again, no guarantees, but that's happened to me, and it was a lot of fun.
I once rode it 5 times over the course of a day. And that was getting off and going back on each time. It wasn't just staying on the train.
Yeah.
It was one of my brother's favorite attractions when we were growing up. So my brother, my dad, and myself would go on. My mom doesn't like it; she wouldn't go on it. So we were there with my grandparents, and my grandmother and my mom would wait off the ride for us to get off the ride. And there was one day when they just kind of wanted to go off and do their own thing, and my dad, my brother, and I just kept riding it. We just, got off. We're like, oh, hey, there's a line. Let's go back on it. And we got back on it. And so you beat me. I only did it 5. You did it 6. It's just one of those attractions that is just fun. It's like, I'm going to go do it again.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a lot of fun. There's a good reason why there are normally long lines for it, and it's because it's just a great attraction. So it's worth doing multiple times for all the reasons that we talked about, especially the day versus night one, because you really do get different experiences. That was a good point.
Yeah, there's a few, but that's definitely one of them.
Yeah. Okay, interesting list. Top 6 interesting details in Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. Number 1, the painting of Barnabas T. Bullion. Number 2, the history of the Western River Expedition. Number 3, the references to the Apple Dumpling Gang. Number 4, all of the details that fly by. Number 5, the different experience you get day versus night. And number 6, all the fun things to do in the interactive queue. So Aaron, fun list. I appreciate your joining me. If people are interested in learning about what you're up to these days, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, they can head on over to my website, blog. It is Magic and Misadventures. So if they head on over to magicandmisadventures.com, that is kind of the main blog site. That's where I post. I kind of update regularly. It's not a set time. It's kind of what I have to say. But it's mostly Disney parks related. It's kind of my thoughts. It can range from, ranting and raving about something changing. It can be writing about why I agree with some changes. It can be, lamenting about changes to Epcot. It can be trip advice, do-it-yourself advice, all sorts of different things. And from there, they can also find links to social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. But if they head to magicandmisadventures.com, they'll find the blog, and that's what I do.
And I always enjoy reading about your take. You often dive into the details and provide a lot of backstory and insight, and that's one of the things that I really enjoy about Magic and Misadventures. So thanks for sharing that with all of us.
Well, thank you for having me on. Let me plug it.
Absolutely. Okay, Aaron, as always, it was a lot of fun to talk Disney with you. Thank you very much.
No, thanks.
We head out today to some of the background loop music from Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, and yes, we have made it through the list of the top 6 interesting details in Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. However, our conversation doesn't need to be over. I'd love to hear what you think about our list. Do you have a different idea or something you'd like to add? You can do that by visiting the show notes page at worldofwalt.com/127, a page that will work well on your desktop, tablet, and smartphone. Leave your comment in the comments section and check out what other people think as well. I'd like to thank everyone who's been in touch with me, and I'd like to invite you to follow me on social media, facebook.com/worldofwalt and pinterest.com/worldofwalt. If you enjoyed today's podcast, I would appreciate it if you would spread the word. Tell your family and your friends about it. To wrap up for today, as always, I would like to give you a heartfelt thank you for spending some of your time with me. I'd also like to thank everyone who visits the worldofwalt.com site, where you can read interesting Disney articles and chat with other folks who enjoy Disney in the comments sections. By listening here and by visiting the site, you allow me to share the fun of Disney with you. And that is very cool. Thank you for being a part of it. So until next time, my friend, may God bless you.
So there's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow shining at the end of every day. There's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow, just a dream away.